Yeah, so I think Pirelli obviously have a lot to answer for this weekend because there's been some questions about if they've gone too soft with their tyres. Because I think it does leave us all questioning what is going to happen with his contract.
Exactly. And he's the one who's like, "Oh, I'm not a second driver," but you're not even any driver right now. You're not on the pit or on the field.
Yeah.
Like, you're.
Hi guys, welcome back to On the Chicane. Today we're going to be covering the chaotic race that was the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So much happened, and it was a race that definitely delivered. So I think the best way to start covering this entire race is by quickly looking at quali yesterday. So we had an intense quali, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there was a couple of things that just kept happening, which was the red flags being caused by people crashing in turn 15. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be. I think we just knew it was going to be a crazy weekend, right?
Yeah.
Like Baku, over the years they've had 4 races. They started in 2016 and they missed off last year during COVID. And they've had 4 races, and every single race has been a different driver winning. So 4 races, 4 race winners. And I think even from like Friday, I was like, I bet there's going to be a 5th race winner of this year, and that's exactly what happened. And it all started in qualifying. Even in practice, it was already crazy from Friday. And yeah, yesterday just kept it going with all the madness, really.
Yeah, it was great. I think 4 red flags in just the one qualifying session, which is only an hour. So you've got 4 red flags within an hour.
Yeah.
And obviously it was just stopping, starting, stopping, starting. But it kept us on our toes, I guess. And then obviously to have Leclerc qualify with pole, unexpected again. But the good thing is that obviously he actually got to start the race this time as opposed to last week when he couldn't start in Monaco.
Yeah, a little bit of retribution for him.
Yeah.
I felt good yesterday when he got that pole.
Yeah, me too. I was really happy for him, to be honest. And I think the Ferrari boys, I mean, Sainz kind of wasn't too great today, but the Ferrari boys in general are really like showing their pace at the moment. Again, they were like top of the timesheets in practice and really just giving it their all. So yeah, I do think Leclerc deserved it. But today, the race itself, it couldn't quite hang on to that pole position. And
no, he was pretty much down from like, I think like the first lap.
No, I think he managed to hold on.
Third lap.
He managed to hold on for the first few laps, which I was quite surprised at, to be honest.
Yeah.
But obviously, the distance between pole and the first corner is quite short at Baku. So yeah, Leclerc managed to hold on, which had me screaming. And then yeah, he just kind of lost out to Verstappen and Hamilton, who obviously are the contenders for the championship this year.
Yeah. And quite early in the race, you had Ocon with his engine given out in like the 4th lap, and I felt really bad for him because he had just done like an overtake on Ricardo, and he was doing really well, and like the Alpine looked like it was actually going to be in the points, and between him and Alonso doing really well, and then all of a sudden he was out. But luckily, like nothing massive happened because of that. Like it didn't cause a crazy, safety car or anything super crazy. It was just like fairly straightforward, with him kind of pulling over and his engine being out. So I think the first half of the race was pretty straightforward, right? It was pretty standard.
Yeah, it was a steady race, I think. And I mean, there was like overtaking here and there, and yeah, we saw some good, not intense fights, but just some good battles for positions. Bottas, who we will definitely talk about in more depth later, but Bottas was running at the bottom of the midfield. I think he was like 10th, and at one point I even think he was like 15th. So Bottas was not giving it his all, unfortunately. But the rest of the guys were doing pretty well and doing quite well with the overtakes. And then there was a point in the race where I was about to tweet on the chicane Twitter about how the race was very steady and how it was going quite well. And I think the top three were Verstappen, Hamilton, and maybe Perez. And I was about to tweet, do you think this is going to be how the race is just going to pan out? It's going to be a steady race. And then all of a sudden, Stroll has an issue with his rear left tyre and ends up with a huge impact in the barriers. I think he was just about to go into the pits because he was the only driver at this point who hadn't had a pit stop. And his left rear tyre gave way. He went into the barriers, huge impact. And for me, I thought that
serious.
Yeah, it was. And I thought that would have been the red flag kind of place where we would have red flagged, but we didn't. It was just a yellow flag and a safety car. Luckily Stroll was okay, but yeah, that was an intense impact.
Literally, like when you watch it back, you see he kind of like shudders from side to side where the tire is blown, and then just like spins and flips. So I was like, oh my god, I genuinely felt a bit scared for him. And that then kind of, I feel like that kick-started the actual race. Before that, the craziest thing that happened was like, you know, Hamilton's pit stop, which was a bit slower than usual. Not Mercedes' fault for once. I was about to get onto them about the Mercedes and their shit pit stops, which I've been getting onto them for the last like few videos. But actually, this time it wasn't their fault. It was Pierre Gasly who was coming into the pits, and it would have been an unsafe release for Hamilton. He wouldn't have been able to kind of pull out. So I think, you know, before that, everything was really, really straightforward. It was just like almost a procession a little bit at the front. You know, you had Verstappen kind of leading very steadily, and then you had Hamilton, and you had, who was behind him? Perez? No, you had Verstappen, Perez, and then Hamilton behind him. Because
yeah, you're right, yeah.
Verstappen, when Hamilton went into the pits, because of his long pit stop, he came out, and
it was really close between Perez and Hamilton.
It allowed Perez to kind of do a really great lap and kind of get out to the point where Perez was even, if Perez had had a good pit stop, he would have been in front of Verstappen. And I think that's kind of like almost the key as well in the race, because I was quite happy actually afterwards. I heard Christian Horner say that if Perez had come out in front of Verstappen, they would have allowed him to be there, which is quite good, because, you know, like Red Bull can be really shitty about those things and kind of hold up one of their drivers so that Verstappen can win. But it was a little bit refreshing. Usually I hate everything that Christian Horner says, but it was a little bit refreshing to see that he actually was saying, you know, no, it's too early in the championship to make those kind of calls. You have to let them race, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, like after those pit stops, which happened really early in the race, everything was just really straightforward. Nothing particularly spectacular was happening, other than, I think, the fact that Hamilton was actually able to keep up behind Perez, which is almost unheard of in F1, you know, like maintaining a close distance to the car in front. But other than that, was anything really crazy happening? No, everything was like pretty straightforward. And then, yeah, boom, Stroll's tyre just blows, and that just kicked off the madness.
Yeah, so I think Pirelli obviously have a lot to answer for this weekend, because there's been some questions about if they've gone too soft with their tyres, because I think it was a soft compound that the drivers had, and also the second impact that did cause a red flag was Verstappen, obviously, and he had the same issue as his rear left tyre. So Pirelli are definitely going to have to answer some questions, because I think most of the teams will probably have a lot to say. You could even, in Stroll's voice, actually, you could hear him. He was shaken up by his incident.
Yeah, he was totally shaken
up. It seemed a lot more like...
That's the second time it's happened to him, though, because it really reminded me of Silverstone last year, when Hamilton's tyre blew, but also Bottas's tyre, and I think Stroll's tyre blew in that same race.
Yeah.
So you had, you know, 3 tyres blown, and I feel like this is the same kind of thing where like Pirelli then had to go and look at the race. I think at the time they said it was like just a coincidence, but the fact that it's happening on more than one like circuit, and Baku
I know
has
that
a lot
they
of
actually. I know that Pirelli actually did go, I think, like a grade softer or something on their tyres for this weekend. So I think that is the issue that they potentially need to look at. But especially if it's happening to another driver, the exact same tyre, and only a few laps difference, like it's obviously an issue. But yeah, so Verstappen ended up. Okay, wait, actually, there's so much that happens in between all of this, so let's not get carried away. After Stroll's incident, it was like back to racing behind the safety car. We were just obviously in a procession, then it was back to racing. Who was leading at this point? Was it Verstappen?
Sebastian, yeah, Seb was leading because he had to so was he leading? He was leading. There was a point where he was leading.
There was a point where he was leading, but I'm not sure if that was it, but I don't know. I can't remember.
And then but then he had to pit. So he was leading and then he had to pit and then he ended up like way back next to Bottas.
Obviously, okay, so yeah, going on to Verstappen's crash, that happened with 5 laps to go. So yeah, Verstappen also ended up crashing out, going into the barriers. For me, it looked like it was lower impact than Stroll's crash. So I was surprised that, like I've said, I was surprised that they red flagged after Verstappen's crash and not after Stroll's crash. But obviously it worked.
They said that it was for the debris, like it had more debris. But to me, I think
I thought it looked like
they were
more
both on the
Stroll.
straight and they both had like a lot of debris. But
I know.
Maybe there was still stuff left over from Stroll's.
Yeah,
I doubt
maybe it was the position. I don't know.
But maybe it was the position. I don't know. Everybody was kind of like just generally commenting on Michael Massey's judgment across the whole race and just like when he was calling the red flags and those kind of whether or not it was a yellow flag or a double yellow flag and stuff. And I think I don't know. I did see a tweet that said that he can't handle it. Obviously, he's taking over from Charlie Whiting like after Charlie Whiting passing away, but he's a younger guy and maybe he doesn't have as many years of experience as Charlie Whiting, but I think it's a difficult decision to make.
I think it's like a kind of thing that you just learn as you go along. There's no it is like a personal judgment kind of thing. Obviously, you've got a team around you, but you kind of just have to make the call in the moment. But yeah, because of the whole yellow flags, double yellow flag situation, there were quite a few people who got a few warnings and penalties as well. I think even Latifi received a 10-second penalty for failing to drive through the pit lane. So yeah, obviously after Verstappen's crash, the race was red flagged, the session was stopped. At this point, you've got Vettel, who I think was second, Perez was leading, Vettel was second, and Leclerc I think was third.
So that was the ending. That was so much stuff happened, guys. So much stuff happened that is
we can't even keep track. So really sorry for how awful this is going.
So on the restart, you had it was normal. So it was like on the restart, you've got Perez, who is now first after Verstappen has crashed out. And you've got Hamilton, who's second. And then you've got Vettel in third, Leclerc in fourth, and Gasly in fifth.
Yeah.
And after they've restarted, Gasly and Leclerc are having their little French battle that's going on, Monegasque versus the French, which I quite loved. That was a nice little tight battle that was going on. And then you've got Hamilton, whose brakes were like smoking on the grid as they started up. And he basically overshoots and ends up going wide in one of the turns and just continuing straight on, completely moving himself to the back of the grid and taking himself out of the points, which was crazy. Because
I think that was the most intense part, because it's like you've got Verstappen, who's already out of the race. He's leading the championship at the moment. And then Hamilton, this is his chance to redeem himself. And he overshoots, is out of the points, last on the grid. And then you've got both of the championship contenders not in the race anymore. So now it's anyone's game. And you're like, what the hell?
He must have been kicking himself. Like,
I did feel really bad for him.
Bad for him.
Yeah.
Like, I felt bad for Max, which is rare because who feels bad for Max? But in the circumstances of how his like tyre blew.
Yeah.
He was in, you know, contention. He was in position to win the race. He'd done really well to drive so far, or whatever. And, you know, he went out. Nobody wants to see him lose that way, and Hamilton to kind of take back position in the championship, because we all love a good race fight. And I hate people being like, oh, Hamilton's just so lucky, he'd never win if it wasn't for blah, 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 blah. So karma-wise, I think it balanced it out, and it kind of reset the championship, and it allows nobody to come with their bullshit about whether or not Hamilton's a good racing driver or Verstappen's a good racing driver. And it just ends up the way it is. But I was just like heartbroken.
I was heartbroken for both of them, to be honest. Like Verstappen, like you said, did not deserve to lose out like that. He was driving a really good race and really showing that he was like determined to get this. Hamilton, again, I feel like he's slowly slipping, but you know, he really obviously wanted to try, and then afterwards just his body language, the way that he was speaking over the radio, it just broke my heart. And I was like, I can't deal with this.
Give him a hug. I felt so bad for him, because he genuinely, like, he wasn't even like blaming anybody else, because he knows it was his fault, not that there was anyone who could have blamed, but it was just like he was so dejected. It was really sad to watch. On the other hand, Perez then goes on to win, because you know, after that, the restart, you only had like 2 laps. You had like 1 lap around the safety car, and then you had 2 laps, which is basically like a qualifying shootout, and whoever pips it first past the post kind of thing. And it happened to be like Perez, because he had won a great race. Like I said earlier in the race, he had nearly made it in front of Verstappen anyway. So I felt like for him, this was just beautiful for him to make it into that position. And you know, I love Checo, so I was sad on one hand, but happy on the other hand.
Yeah, I think it was just like an incredible last 2 laps. Obviously that Hamilton going wide and whatever put Vettel into second, and then the battle between Leclerc and Gasly. Obviously I was like divided 50-50. I was like, I kind of want Leclerc to get this, I kind of want Gasly to get this, I don't know. And then I was like, either way I'll be happy, and I am so happy.
You just had a really good race, didn't you? You just had all the good drivers. Like, honestly, you had Vettel up there.
Top 3 drivers. Yeah, I'm so happy. The only person who's kind of missing from this battle is Ricciardo. But yeah, I was really happy. So good to see Vettel on the podium for Aston Martin. It's their first podium as Aston Martin, the new Aston Martin. So yeah, that was just...
Racing Point podiums don't count anymore.
Yeah, that was great. And then obviously Gasly getting P3. And I think I've actually recently seen a lot of people kind of knocking down Gasly, been saying that like his win last year was a fluke, and that, you know, like he hasn't really got it. But I think this again today, his battle between Leclerc, him coming out on top, it shows that he obviously is one of the greatest racing drivers in the world. And I actually was happy for him to get P3, because I think it's just a bit of a, as what did Bottas say last year, like to the haters, fuck you or something. It was a bit like that kind of moment for me for Gasly, to be honest. So
yeah, I guess it's true. And I mean, he was pretty strong across the whole weekend. AlphaTauri's just in general, as much as Tsunoda parked it into a wall in Q3, but before that, like, there was a point where, you know, I think in one of the practices he was quite up high, and then he qualified like 8th or something. So
even in the race today, he overtook Alonso at one point, I think.
Exactly. So I think the AlphaTauris, I don't know if it's a circuit specific thing, or, you know, because they're them and Red Bull are powered by Honda engines, and they're doing really well this year. Like, whatever the reasoning is, like, they are kind of holding their own, and as a midfield contender. So whereas usually, you know, you'd have you've got Mercedes at the front, you've got Red Bull kind of like floating somewhere around the middle, maybe against Ferrari over the last few years. Obviously, Ferrari's not been that strong. And then you'll have like 1 or 2 midfield contenders that are kind of batting out, and then it just goes to shit everything afterwards. But I feel like this year, like, we've got great midfield battles, and I keep saying this, but I want to see them. Like, I genuinely do not want to just watch. The first half of this race, like we said, it was pretty like straightforward, pretty standard, and the cameramen just stayed on Verstappen.
It's just the way that F1 show it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I know that on the F1 the online thing that you can watch, like F1 TV or something like that, you can swap between drivers. I don't know if you can do that on like Sky Q. You can't do it on regular Sky, like Sky HD. But I'd love to just be able to see, you know, like, oh, what's Stroll doing right now? Let's go just on board with him and see what he's up to. It's just hate seeing the front runners all the time. And especially this year when we do have such a great midfield fight. Like we've got Alpine doing well, we've got AlphaTauri doing well, we've got Ferrari doing superbly well, and then like McLaren, Aston Martin are even like up there obviously today for the first time. So, you know, there's a lot going on around the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. You are right. We do need to see more of the midfield battles. But yeah, so today's podium was Perez, Vettel, and Gasly, and it was great. I think just the kind of mix-up that we all like. But moving on to two drivers that unfortunately haven't really been showing us the greatest performances ever. Are obviously Bottas, and it pains me to say, I really don't even want to say it, Daniel Ricciardo obviously isn't quite living up to expectations, and it is heartbreaking. Honestly, I feel like I might cry.
I feel like overall it's a whole, like you have to look at all of the second drivers and how well they're doing, and obviously, you know, you've got like Perez who is surpassing expectations, or in a way like living up to expectations, because that's what you expect of a second seat Red Bull driver. But at the same time, everybody just like treats it like the cursed seat and nobody gives them real props. Whereas you've then got, by contrast, you've got like Bottas and Ricciardo, who should be doing well. Ricciardo should not be a second seat driver. He should be number one in McLaren. He's just not.
Yeah, I mean, so Norris ended up finishing 5th. Ricciardo ended up finishing 9th.
Yeah.
But that being said, like even yesterday, I think Ricciardo didn't even make it into Q3. He only finished in Q2.
He went into the wall.
Yeah, so it's just, how much of a chance are you supposed to give these drivers? You know, like he's not a rookie. He's been in F1 for over 10 years now. He should by now have a good grip on things, and he is just not delivering. Whereas he's got his rookie teammate Norris, who's only been in F1 for 3 years, fully just committing to his position, committing to his role, committing to his team, and outperforming himself every weekend.
But do you think it's a case of like commitment? I don't think it's commitment. I feel like, you know, no, maybe he just needs more time. He's not going anywhere anytime soon, so he does have the time to.
Yeah, but that's the thing. How much time do you give these people? Is it supposed to be their first year where they do settle in? Because I was thinking the same thing for Vettel. I was like, okay, fine, they're not doing that well. It's, you know, they're a average team. They're not at the top of their game.
Yeah.
But even Aston Martin have somehow come out ahead. Yeah, they should really be battling McLaren, and they are. Whereas, but the thing is, you've got Stroll and Vettel both putting their best performances and trying to do what they can to get whatever they can out of the car. And obviously, Vettel comes in second today. Whereas for McLaren, I feel like it is kind of only Norris kind of trying to push the team, and then Ricciardo is still trying. You can't blame him for not trying, because he obviously is, but he's just not delivering. So
yeah, I mean, like, I think yesterday, you know, a lot of them were running real deep on a lot of the corners, and I think if I was a driver and I wasn't feeling so comfortable with the car, I know you have to push, but I would do everything I could not to hit the walls. I feel like that would be more of a priority than trying to push a car that I'm already not comfortable in.
yeah.
So in that sense, I think his judgment should be better. And I don't know, I'm just disappointed. I feel like he's going to get a lot more stick, which is going to lead to a lot more pressure, which is probably not going to make him do any better than he's already doing at the moment. And I just really want to see him do well. On the other hand, Bottas.
What can we even say about him? I feel like we say the same thing every weekend. It's like, where even is he? He's had such an awful weekend, obviously, getting stuck at the airport in Finland on Thursday.
That just set the tone of his whole weekend, didn't it?
Yeah, it pretty much did. Because from then on, he has just severely been lacking. And
Yeah.
today he should have been at the front trying to at least help his teammate push on, or at least trying to bring home some points for the team. He didn't even score any points today, and he's racing for the best team at the moment.
And people can say like it's to do with setup or whatever it is, like, but you know, I don't, as much as his setup might have been different to Hamilton's, I hear that they both choose their own setup. So it's not like they're given their setup and they don't know how to use it or whatever. And he chose a setup that would be better in corners. Hamilton chose a setup that would be better on the straights. And I just think like you can't just blame the car. The only time he was allowed to blame the car was when they messed up his pit stop the other time. Other than that, this whole season, it's like, it's you know. What stopped you from doing like what Vettel did? Vettel was first at one point because he hadn't pit yet, and even when he pit, he ended up like in front of Bottas. So I feel like, you know, something is majorly going wrong with Valtteri Bottas. At the very least, he shouldn't have been 10th. He should have been like 4th or 5th if it was like an issue with his car or whatever. But 10th, that's crazy.
Yeah, and for him to not even score any points at the end of it is just shocking. So that I think this is the first race in God knows how long that Mercedes haven't scored any points. And obviously you've got their competitor Perez, who's bringing home pole position first for Red Bull. So I don't know, when the first drivers do kind of go off and don't finish their race, you need the second driver to pick it up and to bring home whatever they can, and Bottas just could not do it today. So it does leave us all questioning what is going to happen with his contract.
Exactly. And he's the one who's like, oh, I'm not a second driver, but you're not even any driver right now. You're not on the pit or on the field. Like you're a zero driver, you're off.
Yeah.
Maybe be the reserve.
Yeah, genuinely. I think I'm very much now verging on the side of Bottas not being in Formula One next year. I don't even know if he's dropped by Mercedes. I don't even know if there are any other teams that will pick him up. And it is. I don't know if it's too soon to start bringing in, you know, Russell rumours and to say that Russell might take that seat, because I do still think Russell's still quite young and quite inexperienced for that seat. However, maybe, you know, I don't know, there's just a lot of possibilities out there, and I think if Bottas doesn't knuckle down sooner, much sooner rather than later, he's not going to have a seat next year.
Yeah, he definitely needs to be like making calls. I think that's the difference between him and Lewis, is it seems like everything happens to Valtteri, whereas Lewis goes out and makes things happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Like, you know, I don't know, just you can't be a victim of bad luck that much. Come on.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how he performs in I think the next race is France. Next weekend, the weekend after, so we've got 2 weeks. Yeah, we'll just have to see if he can pick it up then, I guess. And also we'll see what happens with Hamilton and Verstappen next time as well, and see if anyone can bring home some points then. But yeah, I suppose that's it for now. Anything else you want to add?
No, just that I wouldn't mind if Verstappen didn't win any more points for the rest of the year and Perez won. I wouldn't mind at all. But
yeah. So yeah, on that note, I guess, guys, we will see you in 2 weeks' time for French Grand Prix. But obviously, as always, in the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at On The Chicane, and this video obviously is going up on our YouTube channel, which is On The Chicane. But like, share, comment, subscribe, all the rest of it, as you know, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.